I should close that door.
There. I always leave my door. It's for the dogs. That way they can just come and go. No,
I don't think
but
my dad wants to hear this. He's watching the U.S. Open.
that's right. But we are live right now. We have two eyes on us. That might be us, just us two. But
Doesn't matter.
it's Monday. It's Labor Day. Is it Labor Day or Labor Day? Yeah, it's Labor Day because they call it Labor Day. Yeah, so, I don't know. Speaking of labor, what are you up to today? You working out at all? Gonna get a workout in?
I don't think so. Just got a flight to Madrid in a couple hours, so trying to get everything situated for that.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to stop by my dad's place here in Chicago. So, but basically, I'm like dropping off things that I've accumulated, and then making some space for the next half of the trip. So I'll send some stuff back to Charlotte. So mostly just trying to get organized for the next 2 weeks in Europe, and then 2 more weeks in the States before I ultimately get home in October.
Yeah, and then you have a couple weeks before Rogue, and we'll talk about Rogue later on. But yeah, you're in Chicago, so this past weekend. Oh, you're on your way to Madrid. I just got a Zoom call with Jess Smith. She's actually in Madrid right now. She said it's raining, so I don't know. I guess be prepared for that. It should be fine by the time you get there.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, weather is weather, but I think Madrid will be nice. I have 48 hours once I get there before the competition starts, and then it's 4-day competition. There's a lot going on, but it won't be like the last couple of weeks where it's been like 10 or 12-hour days straight of coverage, because we're only broadcasting the elite this year over there, and they just made an announcement about that on Instagram, I believe. So it should be a little bit more relaxed from my perspective in terms of the strain on the voice and the amount of time locked into the desk. So I'm hopeful to be able to experience the rest of what they have going on there besides the elite competition, because it's quite a big event outside of just the elite competitors.
Yeah, I believe last year, I think someone said it was like 5,000 to 8,000 competitors. Might have been more than that. I don't know. Just guesstimate.
Maybe in their qualifier, I think there's only like 2,500 to 3,000 athletes that will compete over the 4 days, which is still a massive number, and it's one of the biggest events in the world. But maybe they have more like on their qualifier, closer to that.
Before we start, draw your dagger. Had a question.
He is not.
Okay. Speaking of shirts, you mentioned something about packing. Obviously, you got a huge package delivered to your father's up in Chicago from Sharper Works that included a lot of our shirts, a lot of our game shirts. So, what do you plan on doing with that stuff?
I mean, I've had a few people from Europe reach out to me and ask to bring some stuff over, so I've labeled those things and have them all packed away. But I'm not going to bring a ton of stuff otherwise. I'm bringing a few extra things, so maybe a couple people can get lucky over there. But I decided that I would prefer not to bring, just an extra box that I have to check, stop to stop to stop. So I'm just going to travel as light as I can while still bringing a few things.
Yeah. Before we talk about your upcoming trip, let's talk about stop 3 on the world tour. Stop 3 took you where?
Yeah, I just got back from Three Rivers, Michigan last night. I was there for the Pit Teen Throwdown, 3-day competition there. I think I was there for 3 nights and 4 days. Sorry, thought I was gonna sneeze. Anyway, yeah, it was. I meant to go there like 3-4 years ago, 2020, and it didn't happen. So I was really grateful for the opportunity this year, and it was, I would say, the overall experience exceeded expectations. I had heard many good things from people who've been there before, competed there before, are involved there. I've had conversations with Stephanie Price and Brock Yost over the years, but it's kind of one of those things where until you meet them in person, until you get on site there and see what the environment is, what the landscape is, what the overall kind of mentality that Brock has created. They have this saying of leave no doubt. And I feel like the whole community there rallied behind his leadership and embraced that mentality. And it shows in everything that they do, their work ethic day to day, the organization that they have, the leadership that they have in kind of, each different role, whether it's equipment team or media team or judging. There was definitely some impressive individuals in that regard. And I think, I've experienced this in other competitions. But all of the things that I had heard previously about what the Pit Teen Throwdown is about from a competition experience and also from just a overall mindset were, proven to be true this past few days.
Yeah, and you weren't the only one there. I mean, obviously you had Joel Gadet who was on the broadcast with you, which we'll talk about the broadcast. You had Bella Martin, who's a really well known in the MC world. I mean, and then there was them being a partnered CrossFit event. They actually had some people from CrossFit there, right?
CrossFit licensed event they are, and Adrian Bosman and Heather Lawrence from the CrossFit Games team were there, and they had Heather had got there first. She was hanging out on the JV day, which was a Friday, and that was that competition is for people, young kids, that have never competed before. So it's a very cool experience to be, to offer an environment like that for them. Got to talk to her for a few hours. Then Adrian showed up, and they went and met up with Brock and Stephanie, and went around the property and talked about a variety of different things. Adrian did a little guest workout announcement on Friday, which was very cool experience for the kids, and actually for me too. I got to be the kind of demo athlete as he walked through the movements. I demonstrated the standards and flow, and then a group of us did the workout. There's the Michigan State Police or Michigan State Troopers have a big influence there. They've been supporting that event for years, and so a few of the officers, Bella, Joel, and myself, demoed the workout. We did the whole workout in front of all 100 varsity and collegiate athletes after that on Friday night.
No pressure. No pressure at all.
No, I had said that I wanted to beat Bella by one step, and that's exactly what I did. Joel got us both, so Joel took the W there. He was very close. We all finished within 5 seconds of each other. I used a heavier D ball than him, but otherwise we had the same version of the workout.
Yeah, people don't know that about Joel, but he's sneaky fit. I mean, he's not very strong in terms of what you would expect from a CrossFitter, but I mean, he's strong for his size, and yeah, I mean, he works out every day at his affiliate. I think down in Indianapolis is where he's from, that area. But yeah, well, that's kind of cool. I mean, I'm sure it was really cool for the kids or the young adults there to kind of see like that presence of CrossFit being there. Kind of maybe like reaffirms that they do matter and that event does matter. So especially for Boz, I know that it probably meant a lot for them to see Boz there.
Absolutely, but a variety of different people, adults and kids alike, were able to go up and talk to him, take a picture with him, whatever. I mean, for someone who has as much responsibility as he does within the sport, he was for anyone who wanted to, take a minute and have a conversation with him.
Yeah, and Boz is the type of person like he will have a conversation with you. Maybe not as long as you want because he's being pulled in so many different ways, but he always makes time to actually have a conversation, especially with the athletes. And I can only imagine that probably helped out I don't know, was probably a good moment for those teenagers there.
Yeah, and he was having a good time. Boz has been around since the ranch era back in Aromas, and this place, the Pit Teen Fitness Ranch, has very much of a feel of an old school CrossFit competition in terms of the ruggedness landscape. They did a 5K trail run through sand and dirt and up hills and gravel. They did a speed bike as a part of a chipper in the finale from park terrain. They get to swim in the lake. Rogue provided a lot of equipment there. They built a rig down by the lake the kids get to use. They had burpees in the dirt over hay bales. They had to drag sleds through the slag field, which is basically a lot with gravel and dirt. So you get down and dirty at the ranch for sure. And I think that Boz really resonated with that. And he seemed almost, I don't want to say like giddy, but like excited and passionate about just being in an environment like that for a competition. Again, because obviously there are other elements that are very valuable about the Carson and the Madison eras, but I think for him it was a lot of nostalgia, kind of taking him back to those early days.
Yeah. I
There's
think it
Brock
was
Yost right there with Adrian.
there with Adrian. Yeah. You said there was a 1 day junior varsity event, and then the varsity event happened Friday and Saturday, correct? Or Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday,
And
Sunday. Yeah, so we did not
yes.
broadcast the JV day. That was not never really in the plan. We did do a full broadcast of all 6 divisions and all of the heats of all of the events over Saturday and Sunday. So there were some long days for Joel and I, but I
Mhm.
know from kids and parents how much they appreciated that. Positive comments, thank yous, posts, stories, whatever on Instagram. Kids that would come up and either ask to take a picture or say thank you guys for being here. And it felt in many ways similar to what's been happening everywhere I go. Is that these
Mhm.
competitions that haven't had a broadcast before, whether it's the organizers, the community there, the athletes, their coaches, and then of course people from home. I get random message from some kid's dad or some group of kids coach who couldn't make the trip for whatever reason, just saying this is so cool that I'm able to watch my son compete. I wasn't able to make the trip for this reason or that reason, and some of those reasons are quite emotional and impactful. um, so it feels good to have the opportunity to do that, and then it's a bit validating when the kids or the athletes come and say those things or reach out and express gratitude for that.
Yeah, and the broadcast is really well done. And from what you're telling me, it wasn't someone that you typically see in terms of broadcast, like dealing with like Hamilton Roads or some of the other streaming services out there for CrossFit. He said it's pretty much like almost home built.
Yeah, this is actually really kind of cool. Obviously, Joel Gadet has a pedigree as a play-by-play analyst for the sport of CrossFit. I mean, outside of Sean Woodland, he was the only other one to call a semifinal that CrossFit put on. He was the play-by-play guy for the teams this year at the games, and he has done the adaptive, the age groups, teenagers, masters. He has a wealth of experience in that regard, and I am whoever I am. Besides the two of us, the rest of the team that was involved in putting on this broadcast it's like it's incredible. So there's this man, Mark. He had a son that was competing there, um, and it was not his biological son. He adopted him after that guy had a very unfortunate circumstance with his parents when he was young,
Hmm.
and he's been incredible in terms of raising this kid and supporting him. And he was competing in the JV division, and so he was going to be coming there anyway. And back home, wherever they're from, which is not too far away, a pee-wee football coach that's like this very enthusiastic leader of their community that has purchased broadcast equipment over the past couple of years that he uses to stream the pee-wee football games, especially when they go on the road. And Mark has been involved with that and helping him. Mark's just an IT guy. He either owns or works for an IT company, and he does this as a hobby and something that he enjoys. He's always up for a challenge. And this guy was there all day. He was there on Thursday when I got there. He was there all day Friday, setting everything up, testing everything. The camera operators were his daughter, Brock Yost's nephew, some
Hmm.
random dude that I just think that volunteered. And then we had a drone pilot. This guy had a drone that he brought that he used. There's like
Hmm.
there's no one professional behind the scenes on this. These are all people that are either kids, volunteers. Obviously Mark has an incredible capacity for IT in general to be able to pull some of that stuff off, but he found a way to create graphics for the for the commentators. He had leaderboards that he pulled up on day number 2 to show the top 5 in every division that he created. Had some commercials that he was running on behalf of the sponsors. And then, I mean, realize that there was like 4 fields of play. There was the run and the bike run that was an off-course event. There was the slag field underneath the copper hopper in the parking lot. There was the rig down by the lake, and then of course there was the events inside the box. And we were able to stream all of those things. And the way that they did it, I don't even understand this entirely, but they basically built some PVC structures that went up about
Hmm.
12 feet, and then on top were putting some stuff that I think it was basically triangulating the internet to a specific area so that the feed would be stronger, so that could send a signal back. And it worked. I mean, we had a few technical difficulties, but when you consider like what we were working with, which is relatively nothing, and what we were able to create, it's pretty damn cool.
Science.
Well, just
But
it's a mentality that really that I was referring to that Brock has. It's like he has this drive that if he commits to do something, he's going to find a way to get it done. And he was involved with that. I think actually the PVC towers to triangulate the signal was his idea, and that he helped to build those things. And everyone there, I'm telling you, every person there embodies the spirit that he sets forth and puts forward into what he does, and they take that into their various roles. And I mean, look, on Saturday we started streaming at 8 a.m. and we finished at 6 p.m. And we never had a break more than we had one break that was 25 minutes. Otherwise, there were never a break more than 5 minutes. And it's not just me and Joel sitting there. That's those kids running operating cameras, guys, flying the drone, Mark on the back end, controlling and running everything. Um, so it was really like people just stepping up to the plate and putting in long days and committed to finding a way to make it happen. And then we get all the kind remarks and great gratitude from the people who are able to watch. And if you on site there, same as at the Iron Games, same as in Finland, there was a big crowd on site, but you can only fit so many people there. Only so many people can make the trip to be there, and there's thousands more that are watching back home or somewhere else that never would have had a chance to see what was going on in a unique location or a high level competition like that, even if it doesn't have the biggest names in the sport.
yeah. Thomas asked, "Do you think events and streams like this will impact coverage for the games in the future?" And he said, especially for the age group and adaptive.
I think absolutely. I don't know. I don't know what the future of the sport's going to look like entirely in that regard, but as I mentioned, I had a couple hour long conversation with Heather when she was there, and she's aware of what I've been doing and was asking me questions about the experience in Finland at the Iron Games, what we were doing here, kind of even just asking me why I'm doing it, um, and giving her some thoughts about the different ways that we've been able to pull it off, and then just more big picture thoughts about um, what it could potentially look like to have more consistent coverage of specifically CrossFit licensed events, week after week after week, even in the off season. And that if there is some element of consistency that we can create, where if you were watching Pit Teen Throwdowns this week because you knew someone that was competing there and you're following along, you could say, and next week we're going to be in Madrid, and you'll be able to follow that action here. And maybe it's even on the same service, in the big picture. Would there be a CrossFit network like they have for something like disc golf? Would someone like ESPN pick up something like that and run it multiple weeks over the course of the year? I don't know. But I think that having something consistent like that does target some different demographics, has an opportunity to introduce new audiences to CrossFit that might be locally or regionally relevant to them, or even if it's just hitting the masters competitions, hitting the teenage competitions, hitting the adaptive competitions, that you'll get people that are specifically interested for a personal reason that might then be like, oh, well, actually, this is kind of cool outside of just the fact that I know someone competing this week. And maybe I will turn in next week and see what's going on at the next stop on the tour.
Yeah. And I will say I haven't watched Sundays because I was busy, but I watched Saturday's broadcast and it looked great. It looked like a professional broadcast. And then also hearing your voice and Joel and just seeing how that dynamic works. It was really well done, and bravo to that whole pit staff for doing that, and especially the volunteers, because we know in CrossFit nothing's possible without volunteers, and that goes from the games to even smaller competitions to person volunteering to judge you during the open. But you mentioned Heather Lawrence. For people that don't know who Heather Lawrence is, she's the director of, I think, sports operations, but basically she's director of operations for the sport of CrossFit. And she's a former. I mean, she has a depth of experience in sports administration, especially at the collegiate level. So she comes from academia. I believe she teaches or used to be a professor for University of Ohio or Ohio State, one of the two. But she has yeah, she's one of those people who really cares about the sport, and having her there is that's good signs for CrossFit. It's very good signs for the sport of CrossFit, especially the teen division. Having her and Boz there, I mean, she just that's a really good sign overall.
Yeah, she's like as you mentioned, she has a high pedigree of experience with sport and sports administration, and this is basically her dream job. If I'm not,
Hmm.
she's not, maybe didn't say that specifically, but that's how I interpreted that
Yeah.
is that this is, and I think, from the conversation I had with her, she is very excited about many of the things that they have the intention of bringing forward into the sport, the coverage and some consistency that they are well aware has been lacking over the last couple of years, and that they're looking forward to getting getting back to.
Yeah. Um, we'll move on from basically just talking about the background and just the broadcast and everything. And let's actually maybe recap some of the competition itself. Again, you said it was 6 divisions, and that's in the varsity, correct?
Yeah, so they had 14, 15-year-old boys, 16, 17-year-old boys, collegiate men, and then the same thing for the girls and the women.
Yeah. So let's start off with the 14 to 15-year-old girls and boys. Looking at the leaderboard, there's some familiar names there for me, like Bryn Cup. She competed at the games this past year. Um, your impressions of seeing her in action, and any notable athletes that stood out in this division?
Yeah, I mean, always the 14 and 15-year-old division is always kind of the most difficult one to be really in touch with, because that's the first opportunity they have to compete. And so it's a new crop of athletes every year, and then every 2 years they move on. Bryn was fourth at the games this year, I believe, and she was definitely the best in her division there. But these, the other girls that you see on the leaderboard all had a series of impressive performances to be able to obviously finish on the podium or near the top of the leaderboard. And same thing on the men's side. That guy Maddox Metcalf was just very strong for a young guy, and he had a series of wins on the strength focused workouts. Akil Lopez was kind of the opposite. They had a workout on Sunday morning down at the beach. It was an AMRAP 9 minutes, 4-bar muscle
Hmm.
up, 6 chest to bar pull up, 8 toes to bar, 10 burpees over the hay. Every division, the exact same workout, and he beat every athlete in every division. 6 rounds plus
Wow.
11 reps. Caden Hogan had the second best score, and then there was no one in the collegiate division that was either to beat either of them. So this guy was like extremely proficient with the gymnastics. Obviously, to finish second overall, he had to be good enough with the barbell and the odd object stuff also, but he stood out in that regard.
And moving on to the a division that obviously there's some names here. You mentioned Caden Hogan before, but the 16 to 17-year-old division. Um, yeah, let's start off with the boys with Caden Hogan.
Yeah, it's actually kind of was funny. Caden came off with a fourth place finish himself at the games this past year, and
Mhm.
at the CrossFit Games, if you watched any of that division, if you were there on site and able to see it, or if you watched the final, you would see that he was smaller than most of the guys that he's going against. Like there's
Yes.
oftentimes some big boys in that 16, 17 division, and this year there were once again. And so you might say like, dang, that guy seems to be like punching up to be able to hang with them, but um, at the games, he did phenomenal on the 5K run, and then he comes here, and the
Mhm.
first event was a 5K trail run, and you may have expected him to crush that. I think that ended up being his worst finish of the weekend. He took fourth, and it was bad. It's just there were some really good runners here, and then he was dominant from there on out, and his lifting was very impressive. Once again, they had a lifting event that every athlete from 14 to 22 had the same ladder of barbells to work through, and then they could
Yeah.
declare one of them to get some extra uh, poundage toward score, basically for doing overhead squats after snatching or front squats after the clean. And he scored like extremely well on that relative even to the division. So for a smaller athlete relative to some of his peers, he was just impressive at the games and the class of the field here. These other guys, Tobin and Silas especially, were also very good. Just a notch below right now, and whether that's an experience thing or just maybe not being as strong or as seasoned, but they also were quite impressive.
Pedro. these names that these teenagers are coming up with. where are the names like Peter and Brian
Peter,
and Patrick?
yeah, even on the women's side, Hayes,
yeah.
Delia, Ashley with an I.
So let's move over to the 16 to 17-year-old girls. It was quite a race. It went down to the last event between basically Hayes Willard and Delia. Delia is someone she's basically been at every Pit Teen, competition. Hayes is relatively new to the sport of CrossFit, competed at the games herself this year in Madison. So, yeah, can you preview that or recap that a little bit?
No, this was a very fun division, and you see relative to some of the others that we've looked at, it ends up being fairly tight with just 8 points between the top four. For most of the weekend, Hayes was leading. Delia actually took over the lead going into the final. Elsie and Isabella were kind of exchanging third place through a few different events, and then obviously there at the end, everything tightened up a little bit. There was a weird kind of unexpected drama thing in the final workout, which was a chipper. They all did some thrusters in the gym, and then they ran out to ride those single gear bikes for a mile around the terrain. And we had actually talked about it on the broadcast in an earlier heat, saying like, it must be like kind of a nervous moment for parents or coaches that are waiting. They're like, they see him go out there. We have like some drone footage of the shots, but you don't necessarily know who's who. And then you're just like waiting for your athlete to come back in. Well, Hayes took the lead and went out the door. Delia was right behind her. And on the way back in, Hayes comes in first. No Delia. Someone else comes in. Another girl, another girl, another girl. And at this point, you realize something's wrong. And obviously, you're hoping that she's okay. And then we start to get word that she did fall and her bike basically broke when she fell. So she was like running with her bike. They had some people on the course with some extra bikes that were riding around, in case something like that happened. So she was able to get a bike from someone else and then come back in. But as an athlete, like that can totally rattle you. You have the lead, the person that's trailing you is out in front of you. You crash on your bike breaks. They come in, they give you a new bike and they say, just finish the workout. But like, what happens to you psychologically in that moment? And how do you just like rally and go and compete and then just trust that whatever's going to happen? She did a phenomenal job. And we'd actually spoken about her in the morning event with just the composure that she was showing and the discipline as an athlete, not starting workouts too aggressively, pacing the workouts really well, handling a little bit of adversity with some other stuff. So she was probably the perfect person for this to happen to. She came in, she did the double unders and the handstand walking and finished up, towards the back of the heat. And then the competition team went back and did some review and had a conversation. They decided to credit her a minute of time for the malfunction of the bike, basically, which it ended up being enough for her to maintain second, but not enough to win it outright. And I think it was probably a good decision, fair decision.
Yeah. And again, Elsie Larson finishes third, and then not too far behind, 3 points back, is Isabella Barclay, and then Ashley Goen in fifth. Those divisions, the 16 to 17-year-old division, that these are for many of them. I think Hayes Willard still has another year at another year of games competition. I think she was 16 this past year. I think Delia has aged out after this competition, but it kind of gives, this is kind of for a lot of these at the last team competitions. I guess you can count Wadapalooza because they do expand that to 18, I believe 16 to 18, and then they're pretty much kind of thrown into the wolves if they want to compete in CrossFit after that. But that's the cool thing about the Pit Fitness or the Pit Teen competition is that they created a division called the Collegiate division, and this is something the Collegiate division, where it's for those athletes who kind of are transitioning. And I also think it's great because it actually keeps these athletes still interested in the sport, because it's really hard to find that interest or keep that interest when you're maybe going off to college and doing other things or pursuing other passions.
You better hope someone's not watching if you're using the word transitioning.
I doubt he's watching, but I'm sure he'll probably catch wind of that anyways. Um,
No, but you're absolutely right. And this is something that I had a chance to speak with Brock Yost about.
mhm,
He jumped in for the last heat of commentary in the last event yesterday because Joel had to take off and go catch a flight. And ended up being perfect as an opportunity to check in with him. The last heat was the collegiate women's division, and as you see, it was the least drama with Maggie
mhm,
Perrin, kind of winning by the biggest margin of anyone in the field. And so we were able to have a little just reflection, obviously call the heat a little bit, and then we stayed on a few minutes afterwards. And he's, I said you had an 18 and 19-year-old division here last year. You've expanded it to 18 to 22. He talked a little bit about why, and he talked about also the possibility of having two divisions within that age group. He's going to go back
mhm,
and look. He didn't necessarily know which one of these athletes was 18, 19, 20, 21, or 22 years old, and he wanted to see, like, as a totality of a division, if the 18 and 19-year-olds were able to hang or if they were just getting beaten by a margin that would maybe make it more practical to split that even into two divisions.
mhm,
Either way, this is something that every sport has, or every, like, most sports, I should say, they have an opportunity for you to compete at a minor league level, right? At something that's not the pinnacle of the sport, but it's an
mhm,
opportunity for you to continue to improve, get competition experience, compete against relatively similar athletes, whether it's because of age, experience, or ability. And because of those opportunities, certain athletes will emerge from those environments and be able to make it at the biggest stage. With the teenage divisions ending at 17 years old, we've spoken about it many times, as many people have. There have been a few athletes that have been able to make that jump immediately. But for the most part, especially on the men's side of things, it's going to take a few years. And if you don't have that competitive outlet or that chance to check in once or twice a year in an environment that's not just your gym, it can be really difficult and daunting and frustrating, and not everyone's going to last. In fact, more people than not won't last if you need 3 to 4 years of additional training, suffering, sacrifice, commitment, before you might have a chance to make it. And even in the case of the best that we've ever seen, in terms of teenagers at the CrossFit Games, the only one of them that's on the men's side that's been able to parlay that into a top 10 finish at the game so far is Dallin Pepper this year. We have
yeah,
seen athletes like Tudor Magda, Cole Griesaber, James Sprague, Guy Maieros. Well, Guy's also had some top tens, I should say. Make
sure.
it to the games. But most of them are still in their first and second years, finishing in the bottom half or bottom, quarter of the field, and that's not a knock on them at all. It's incredibly competitive, especially on the men's side. There's so many talented guys out there that are working so hard to do that. And the men in general develop a little bit more slowly than the women. And if it's a combination of the depth of the field plus the natural progression of a male development. And it's not just physical development, it's also psychological. And
Mhm,
I haven't studied this, but I've heard many people say over the course of my life that, like, the male brain is not really fully developed into what we'd call an adult mindset until their mid 20s. And so, and we know that the mental, fortitude within this sport is massive, and the ability to handle adversity, overcome unfair things, things that are out of your control, unexpected emotions. So that, having something like this, I hope that this is something that CrossFit also can embrace and that other competitions can start to offer. Um, because I do think that if a division like this exists a little bit more regularly, they will have a better path forward
mhm.
for kids that want to become young adults, that want to become professional athletes at the highest end.
Yeah, you mentioned that because last year there was the 18, it was 18 and 19, and an athlete that you saw kind of graduate from that division and compete at a higher level was Ava George from last year or from last week's competition, who she won this division, this collegiate division last year. And here we are a year later. But talking to her, she's like that confidence that she got by doing this competition and winning it, it forced her to kind of pursue this as a career or look into it a little bit more seriously and not just kind of wander off or just CrossFit just being a form of just her staying fit. It built up confidence. And I think for these teenagers, these young adults, the more competition experience they get, that builds up that confidence.
And 1 year later, and Ava's going head to head with Chloe Wilson, and it
Yeah.
came down to the last event between the two of them at a competition with athletes that were, even 10, 12 years older than her. And it's maybe not even so much that she didn't have the ability to do it, but just the belief in herself. And I think many of the athletes that I had a chance to talk to here, look, the events that Brock designed for them were not easy. Like these guys were, these athletes were put to the test for sure, and they had to deal with some tough stuff. And they
Yeah.
all rise up to the challenge, and they all rise to the occasion and do really well. And I think that we will see some of them that will move on and enter into some more well-known or more just the average age of the athletes will be older and more experienced. And I have withheld talking about the collegiate men's division because, as you see there, it came down to 1 point between Noah Martin and Caden Lindahl.
Yeah.
And I'll just say that this was the closest race for first and second in any division of any competition at any CrossFit event I have ever attended, and that includes the 2017 CrossFit Games between Tia and Cara.
Wow.
Noah and Caden. Caden got off to a decent lead. Noah closed the gap, and coming into the final, they were tied. Exactly the same number of points. It's 1 point per place. So barring a tie, they would, the winner head to head between them would take it. Now, there was an outside scenario where Matthew Manley could have taken first and they could have taken, 12th or worse each, and he could have been the winner. But I didn't think that was going to happen based on the overall depth of the division. So it's basically a winner take all scenario. And they go out and Noah's the first one on the bike. Caden's the second or third one on the bike, not too far behind. They come back in. They start doing their double unders. One of them made one error. The other one made 2 errors. Noah Martin kicks up for his handstand walk. It was only 30 feet of handstand walking. It had to be done in 10 unbroken segments, going out, back, and then out to the finish line. Noah does a successful 10 feet, but it looks a little slow. Caden kicks up. By the way, Caden Lindahl is what I've been told, first ever CrossFit competition. So you can imagine the pressure, the excitement, the nerves, the unknown. Handstand walk. He kicks up, takes a couple steps, and comes back down. He just didn't have his bearing. He was trying to go too fast. He was the better handstand walker between the two, I would say. Kicks up again, closes a couple feet, gets across. Noah's going the other way. He catches up to him. Noah has maybe a 1 or 2 step lead with his handstand going into the last 10 feet. And Caden was faster. I was like, if he executes this, he's probably going to get him. It was Noah's best 10 feet of the 3 passes that he made, and they got one hand over the line, touched the other one down, and less than a second later, Caden Lindahl did the same thing. It was there were no chip timers. They listed it as a 1 second difference on the leaderboard. I think it was less than 1 second, but it was clear that Noah had gotten him. But man, I mean, it was, you never know what you're going to get when you go to these things. It was as dramatic and as exciting of a finish to a competition as I've ever seen.
Yeah. And the thing is, people can watch this finish, on their YouTube channel. So for those who want to see what Brian actually was talking about, you can watch that live, and that's something I plan on doing today. But that's really cool to see something like that, especially you mentioned Caden, where he's probably been doing CrossFit for less than a year. This is his first major event, and he finishes second. I mean, that does a lot for a person at that age. Like, hey, I mean, should I pursue this? Should I concentrate a little bit more effort into this? So hopefully a lot of these young men, they found a home, they found something to kind of divert their energy to, or, instead of going out to the bars drinking or trying to find a fake ID, they'll hit the gym a little bit more. And like, hey, this is something that potentially could be, I can turn into a career. And that's where you kind of build that professionalization of the sport, is by starting with the younger adults and building that into them. Into that pathway, a career pathway, possibly.
Yeah, impressive athletes in the collegiate division. There weren't any men in the division that I really knew, or that I've seen compete, in a semifinal or at a Wadapalooza. So I don't necessarily know how good these guys are relative to other athletes around their age or with similar pursuit or interest. But they were good. Like I'm telling you, these guys were good. Several of them cleared the lifting ladder. their gymnastics looked good. They ran well. They competed hard. They, it was it was impressive. I'm just not sure how impressive relative to the elite athletes in the field yet, but I'm hopeful that, these guys and girls that you see on this page will show up, will kind of have that same experience that Ava did and to come away from this with some confidence to say, you know what? Yeah, I want to give it a try. I want to try to qualify for a Wadapalooza. I want to show up to another competition that I know might have a games or an athlete or two at it. A Crash Crucible, a Charlotte Classic, Desert City, Iron Games. All these competitions, Metcon Rush, they're there. There are opportunities, and I'm telling you that these athletes, I think, should, if they had a good time this weekend, that they should, try to qualify or get into one of those and see where they stand compared to a little bit more seasoned or experienced athletes.
Yeah. Every year, I think for the last 3, maybe 4 years, me and you, we've produced something. Basically, it's our next athletes that you don't know about under the age of 23 to look for. And one early contender for me in terms of one of these athletes to look for is Maggie Perrin. For those that don't know who Maggie is, she competed as in a semifinal at 19 years old. I believe it was MAC 2 years ago, and then
Maybe
this
it
past
was either
year,
Mac or Syndicate Crown, and she
yeah,
finished
it's
just
one of
like
those.
23rd or something like
Yeah,
that. So not
yes,
not a crazy good performance, but she made
mhm,
it there and
yes,
competed and beat a quarter of the field.
yeah. And she's someone who probably would have been at a semifinal this past year if it wasn't for some scoring. She's dealt with some injuries. She's actually a training partner of Sam Briggs. Like Sam Briggs, they're at the same gym. They work out together. She's just a really, really just. I got to meet her at the Monster Comp before the games. She was competing on a team with her and Daniel Coos, who's another up and comer. I think that obviously, I believe he's 20 or 21 as well. But like you said, she kind of just dominated from the beginning, which I'm not surprised. But she's someone to keep an eye out for the future. I think that's the whole purpose of this collegiate division, especially on the women's side, is a kind of a sneak peek. We saw that with Ava, and look where she is a year later. I think Maggie is further along than someone like Ava. She's been competing in CrossFit for probably over 5 years, and she's found some success, especially in the open and quarterfinal stages. But your thoughts on her? What's the upside for someone like Maggie?
One of the thing that I maybe caught my eye most about her, very disciplined athlete, a lot of experience for a young woman. But in the final, the last thing they had was those 30 feet of handstand walking. She might have won the event. Actually, I think she got second. I think Nadia passed her on the handstand walking at the end. Nadia Samalas, phenomenal gymnast,
Yes.
by the way, in her own regard. Um, and Maggie had like the competition was locked up. That was not the issue. But she had a mistake that cost her the win and allowed Nadia to beat her at the end. And the look on her face, like she was more frustrated with that mistake at the end than she was happy that she won the competition. And
Mm,
those and if it was a close competition and she just like pulled it out barely and won, I'm sure she would have been happy about that. But the fact that the level of expectation is high, and that even in a weekend where almost everything went right for her, I think she was third on the trail run and first or second on every other event the rest of the weekend. But she was, it was the small things and the fact, this is a good trait, I would say, of someone who wants to compete in CrossFit. Like that was the end of a 2-day competition. There was a lot of physical demand, the nervous system, the legs. You're going to be sore just about everywhere after finishing this. And it wasn't a matter of capacity. It wasn't a matter of skill. It was just a little mental lapse in the last movement of the last event of the last day. And I think she noticed that, and she's like, okay, I could have been a little better right there. And even though it's not going to cost me the win this time, in the future, I have to remember to stay focused all the way through the finish line. And so to
yeah.
see the person who was the class of the women's field there of that at the highest division have that kind of mindset, and it was the last heat. And then I thought about all of the other men and women, boys and girls that had done that same workout and had a very similar experience. There were so many athletes that got 8 or 9 feet or 9 feet and 8 inches of the way across, and then just
Mhm.
lost that mental focus for one step, got a no rep, and had to go back and do it again. And so maybe all of them can learn from that and just be like, in this sport, it's like you never want to celebrate too early. Stay focused and see it through all the way to the end. But it's easier said than done. Having the mental capacity to do that when the body's broken down and you're tired and fatigued is very difficult. So it was just a small moment that stood out to me for her. It might be a little moment of frustration for her, but to me, that's an insight into her as an athlete that actually speaks well about her potential moving forward.
Yeah. You mentioned Nadia. Nadia, she's an I guess not alumni because she's still competing there. I believe she's 18 or 19. She aged out of the team division. She's one of those athletes who just missed out on qualifying the games, I think, a couple times. She's competed. First time I saw her was at the same competition at Pitt in 2020, and it's good to see her there at second. And obviously, someone like Maggie who has a little bit more experience, is older, a little bit more stronger than Nadia. Nadia obviously is really good on her gymnast, but it's really cool to see Nadia. And then Lydia Smith is another athlete very similar to Nadia in terms of she's been in a teen division, but it's just really cool to see their names on this, knowing that they're no longer teenagers or competing at teenage
Well, and
division.
look,
And
Lydia Smith is, as far as I understood, has moved out to San Diego. She's training with the CrossFit Invictus crew out there. She was wearing the Invictus shorts and Invictus belt. And even though she's gone and done that, she did not think I'm too big for this teenage competition. She signed up for
Mhm.
this, made the trip across the country, went there and competed quite well. And I give her a lot of credit for that. First of all, for putting herself in a tough environment in Invictus and training
Yeah,
with people that are better than you every day, but then to balance that out with going to a competition like this where you could have the mentality that I'm too good for or I'm better than, and she didn't have that at all. She still made the decision to go there and compete and competed very well.
well, and we both know that Invictus crew out there. I think CJ it puts that in their mind that there's no any opportunity you get to compete, especially at a young age, you take advantage of. I mean, he has a depth of experience coaching teenage athletes, whether it be Devin Kim, and then someone like Kelsey Schulte, who's very similar to kind of Lydia and was in the team division and was kind of, you know, I guess kind of in that semifinal, quarterfinal athlete as an individual, but made it to the games on a team, and that's just boosts her confidence. So for someone like Lydia, like you mentioned, to go out to San Diego to make that huge move at such a young age, it says a lot
And
about
who
her and
knows?
for her.
Maybe that is the next step for her. Maybe she does
Sure.
show up on a roster of an Invictus team in the next year or two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. They definitely are building. I mean, that's what we know Invictus as, and I I know they're really proud of having three teams at the games. And I could definitely see them trying to do that again. If you have athletes like Lydia, it gives them more experience. It gives them an opportunity if you have like an older person on the team to kind of mentor them and show them how to be a professional. I know for Devin, that's kind of how her teen experience has been like. So, anything else to say about these competitions or these divisions?
I just kind of echo what we said at the beginning, man. It was very impressive. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to go out there and impressed with the environment, the mentality that Brock Yost and Stephanie Price have developed there. I think the broadcast it was very fun to be a part of that for the first time. I think that there's a lot that we can learn from it this year. And even in the programming, it's different to program a competition than it is to broadcast a competition. And if you did watch, you might have seen that some of the events were difficult to follow from a scoring perspective. You didn't necessarily know who was in the lead at any moment. I have some other thoughts about that in general, but um, the the overarching feeling after leaving that weekend is that I was very impressed with what they have going on at the Pit Teen Ranch.
Yeah. And I always love this. They do this at the end of the competitions where they gather all the teenagers and they take this group picture. And that's really what it becomes down to is a lot of athletes have made lifelong friends at a young age because, when you're a teenager and you work out and do CrossFit, it's hard to meet other teenagers that do that because CrossFit and you go to a box, it's mainly, adults, young adults, people like us, but it gives them opportunity to meet some people that have the same interests, and that's fitness and having fun, and they do a good job of doing that. I there's quite a few athletes from that first one that are still best friends, like and it's really cool to see that. And I know someone like Delia, she met Ava Kitsy, who is with the Morning Chalk Up at this thing, and they become best friends, and it's just really cool to see that. And I think it goes back to the root of CrossFit. Well, at least what I think is one of the most important things about CrossFit is the community. And they're building this community at a young age and lifelong friends. I think it's really cool.
Absolutely, man.
So that was the week that was. Let's talk about the week that is coming up. It will be what, stop 4?
Stop 4, yeah, heading back to Europe, going to Madrid, flying. I got a flight in a couple hours.
Yeah, and just getting more stamps on that passport. So we got the Madrid. This is something that's become probably we talk about the tiers of competitions. This one isn't at the tier of Rogue or Dubai or Wadapalooza yet, but it's getting close. This is the first major competition where you see a lot of the stars of the games from the games and with well-known names competing at it.
Yeah, I mean, we can pull up do they still have the athletes listed that they posted last week?
Yes, I'll pull that up. Yep, I'll pull that up right now. They haven't updated the competition corner yet with the list, but we can certainly pull up the one we talked about before. Here it is.
Yeah, I know some people have been asking about the list of athletes. As far as I know, this is the most up-to-date list that exists. It was posted August 17th, so I'm sure that there's been, at least there's the possibility for some additions or some removals since then. But for the most part, you can see the quality or caliber and depth of field that you're going to get here. On the men's side, especially, you see Lazar Jukic, Jonakoski, Uldis Upanex, all coming off of top 20 finishes at the CrossFit Games this year. So that's very cool. And then obviously we have athletes like Travis Mayer, Adrian Moonweiler, who have done that in the past, and looking to, Adrian didn't really even participate in the season at all this year. So, chance to see him after a year off from the CrossFit Games season. Travis Mayer, same thing with the injury, took the season to recover. I know he's been feeling good and been training hard. He was at this one last year, and he's excited to kind of get back and compete well. And then a majority of the other athletes on the list are European, and a lot of them are European semifinalists. Some names: Yorgos Karovis, 2 times Games athlete; Luka Jukic made the Games a few years ago. And then there's some athletes that we think have potential to do so in the future. Alex Katulis has been close many times. Antoine Dumaine. Mikhail Wazalowski also was at the Games this year. He's down there on the list. Colin Bossard came within 1 spot of making it. Victor Helsinghoff, an up-and-coming guy in Norway. Yuri Martinchenko, one of the fittest guys in Italy. So there'll be quite a few. Kevin Jures from Estonia. Quite a few guys in this field. Felix Rader, one of the best guys in Germany, that will I think that a lot of those athletes that I mentioned will have standout moments. And then you see guys like Ben Fowler coming over from Australia. So you do get a little bit of the international, and by that I mean outside of European flair. Most of the guys I listed, I think you'll see 1 or 2 kind of impressive feats from, and then there'll be a couple guys, and don't necessarily know who they're going to be yet, that will I think will impress relative even to the Games athletes.
Yeah, and I think that happens every year at a competition like that. So,
I mean,
I'm
look,
obviously
second place at this competition last year was Anyola Kai, and before that, we didn't know hardly anything about him. He hasn't been able to replicate that performance at a high-level competition since, but it certainly put him on the map. He was at semifinals this past year. I think he's competing on a team in Madrid this time around. But I would expect that we see something similar to what we saw from Anyola last year from one of these guys.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what Victor Helsinghoff does, because you pointed him out from Berlin, and he's we've talked about him before, but he's relatively young. He's that Norwegian athlete, and then also Luka Vunja. It's someone we've seen multiple times, whether it was at Lowlands, and then we also got to see him at Dubai last year. So I'm really interested to see
at the Berlin semifinal. And I know they've announced a majority of the programming too, which we can certainly look at if you want to. But he's and he's not the only one, but he's one of these athletes that with the right set of movements coupled together, and they're not like unusual things. They're things that you could definitely see that he can have an event win even against guys like Jukic and Upanex and Koski.
Yeah. Before we maybe take a look at some of those workouts, on the women's side, Annika Greer. What is Annika Greer looking for in a competition? Like, we know how unfortunate, like, her semifinals, she again had another incident, this time more in her control, where she didn't make the games, and she's been someone for the last 3 years. Everyone's like, she's gonna break out. What does she take to a competition like this, or what do you want to see from her?
Yeah, I mean, I think Annika had, she's still super young. And, she
Mm-hmm.
got pretty good at a young age, and the expectation and pressure that can be put on you, it can be, it can have a different effect on a variety of different people. But the reality is she's been very close, and a few things here, a few things there, and she may already have that accolade to her credit of a CrossFit Games athlete in the elite division. As of now, she doesn't. And I think she just needs to kind of let that go and just, think about the context of this entire conversation that we had around Pit Teen Throwdown. It's like, it's okay if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 and you're not making it to the games. Like, it's very difficult to do that. That doesn't mean that you'll never be able to do that. Even a guy like Lazar Jukic, he didn't compete as a teenager at the CrossFit Games, but it was years of trying and doing local competitions, having some success there, trying to make it, coming up short, trying to make it, coming up short. And eventually he got his chance and he went there, and he's been able to parlay that into the success we've seen the last couple of years. Um, but just because you make the games one time doesn't guarantee you anything. Look at
Yes.
Luka Jukic. He made the games in 2021. We were expecting maybe a similar trajectory to Lazar, and over the last 2 years he hasn't had that. But he keeps going back to the shed, keeps going back to work, and I think it's only a matter of time before he'll be able to show us something similar in that regard that we saw a couple years ago. Sorry,
Yeah, I agree.
something kind of distracting outside. Um,
Right.
but either way, I think Annika, what I want to see from Annika at this competition is that each time she takes the floor, regardless of what happened in the previous event or what might be coming up later in the competition, that she's competing with confidence and with,
Mm-hmm.
more of that composure and veteran mentality that we talked about with some of the teenage athletes. It's like, just she should understand at this point, it's really unlikely and rare that you're going to have a perfect run as a competitor in any competition. Something is going to be frustrating. You're not going to get a call to go your way. You're going to make a miscalculation. You know, Once in a while, the stars align and everything goes perfectly. But regardless if it's the first one, the last one, or anyone in between, if you have a frustrating moment or event, that that she needs to be able to put that behind her and take the floor for the next one. And similarly, if everything goes perfect, also, put that aside and just get ready for the next event, because I think that she has all the physical capacity to do that. She just needs to string together that kind of approach, event by event. And look, there's a 4-day competition. It's not the density or volume of work that you're going to see at a CrossFit
Mm-hmm.
Games, but over 4 days, there are a lot of different factors that come into play that will allow you to have the small margins that are needed to separate yourself from the other athletes in the field. And you look at the women that are competing here, like, she could do quite well. Like, she could, I wouldn't say it's outside of the realm of possibility for her to podium or even win this thing. It's not going to be
Yeah.
easy. You have a few other athletes from Europe, Jacqueline Dahlstrom and Turi Helgadottir specifically, that will also be disappointed with how this season went for them, having not made
Mm-hmm.
the games. And they'll be coming in there hungry to kind of prove that they still have it and they still belong. But also, there's some decent prize money on the line. And if you didn't get that paycheck at semis or the games that you were planning on or hoping for, this is a good opportunity to earn some money in an off-season competition. So it should be a lot to fight for. I wouldn't say, as far as what we see here, at least, there's no clear favorite. There's no woman that's like, yep, she's hands down better than everyone else. So I think a lot of these ladies, even some of the ones that are a little lesser known, should be coming in here feeling very good about the opportunity that's in front of them.
Yeah. And that's one reason why you're going on these trips, is to kind of see. It's not more to evaluate Annika and Jacqueline and Thury. It's more to evaluate some of these other lesser known athletes that you don't know as much of, the Jennifer Muirs, and the Holly Tinnans, and on the men's side, just, I mean, you can pick and choose. There's a bunch of Europeans that you just don't have that much knowledge of. But you mentioned another division is obviously known for is their team division, and obviously there's been a much uh, much attention brought to this was Noah and Chandler teaming up, and with Lana Rector and Sydney Mikulishin as well. That seems to be the class team that's competing. They haven't released any other teams, but I've heard rumors. I know Chandler's wife, Jessie, she made an announcement that she's competing on a team with some of the Spaniards. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, Anyola Kai's got a team that's competing there. I think
Mhm.
I think Guillaume Briant and Claudia Gluck are on that team.
Yeah.
So there'll be some. I mean, this is probably the favorites, but there will be some competition for sure. And
Mhm.
as I said, these announcements were all a couple of weeks ago. So it's possible there are some other athletes competing. I have a conversation with some of the guys in Madrid soon, but I'm hopeful that you know they'll we should be putting out the full roster, hopefully tomorrow, or,
Yeah.
so that everyone can take a look and see who's actually going to be there.
Yeah. And Jesse's on a team with Fabi, and I'm trying to remember who the other two individuals are, but apparently, I guess one of their women just couldn't compete, so he put a call out, and Jesse was going to be there regardless. So, you know, pretty
Is
cool.
Alex on that
Um,
team? Anna Sagasti?
oh, I believe so. Yeah, yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
He's bringing the
So,
bleach blonde hair, I think, too.
yeah, I think is Christoph competing because I know last year Christoph was part of that Krypton non-Krypton team. So I don't know if he's competing again this year, but
I'm not sure, but I mean, I would absolutely love to see him compete. Christoph Horvath is one of those
mhm,
guys. He reminds me of Jelle Hosta in a way, where it's like the qualifying season is so hard for him, but when you put him on a floor in live competition against the best guys in Europe, he holds up pretty well.
yeah, and he's fun to watch. It's just like that guy. You can tell he's out there and he's competing, and it means a lot to him. And um,
And if he's in the field that you're going to get at least one moment from the competition that's
yes,
memorable. He did it last year
a
with I think it
viral
was the
moment.
clean and jerk. And I mean,
Yes,
look, he had what did he have? 135-pound overhead squat for 3 at the road qualifier.
yeah, ridiculous.
It was like
Yeah,
10 pounds more
we'll
than
talk about.
the next best person.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous for such a tall athlete too. But this I think we already talked about this event with the new implement. It's been kind of fun since we talked about it and they announced it. Like some of the things that athletes I've seen them put jump ropes and PVC pipes and duct tape it, and and then I've actually seen people reach out. I mean, if you're elite sport, this is a perfect thing that you want because you had a lot of athletes that like next day ordered this stuff to come so that way they could practice it. But is that clean and jerk with the buy-in with that jump rope that we're typically seeing in an adapted division.
Yeah, I was, like I said last week, happy that they announced that one early.
Hmm.
And, hopefully it's a new challenge for some of the athletes. It feels like some of them have picked it up quickly. Some of them have had a little bit more frustrating time. Okay, I think Lena Richter posted quite a funny post about get ready for extreme athleticism or something like that. And she was struggling with the jump rope. But I think they'll all figure it out to some extent. And it's always kind of fun to have it's not like that crazy difficult, but it's just a new way to challenge yourself within, the realm of competition. And the fact that the adaptive athletes do that is cool too. I know there are some who wish that
Hmm.
they would be forced to do it with one hand, but I think for now it's appropriate as it is.
Yeah. I don't. We can go through these tests real quickly before we move on to something else. I'd like to talk. There's some things I wanted to get your thoughts on before outside of the Madrid, but let's go ahead and go through these real quick. Test one, the MAD beginning. MAD obviously standing for Madrid. That they just call it MAD. But for time, 15 box jump overs, 30 sandbag squats, 45 GHG sit ups, 30 pistols, 15 deficit strict handstand push ups. Um, and then it's just calorie. I guess that's on the AB
Assault bike.
assault bike, assault bike, and then it goes back down. So
Yeah, so a little bit of a longer
that's
one,
chicken.
20-minute time cap. Most
Mhm.
athletes won't need the 20 minutes. The strict deficit handstand push-ups, 15
Yeah,
centimeters is about 6 inches. That's the same for the men and the women. Then
yeah.
that's going to be, certainly a challenge, more challenging for the women in general. But you'll see some athletes absolutely smash this. And many of the implements in here are things that someone like a Luka Vuniak is good at, but with 30 tall box jump overs and 60 calories on the bike, there's a little bit of something for everyone here. So I think fitness probably prevail overall on this one. And you'll see some exchanging of leads from, taller to shorter athletes, or more powerful athletes to more, gymnastics proficient ones. So this could be a pretty fun opener.
Yeah, I see Jacqueline Dahlstrom doing pretty well in this as well. The pistols and strict handstand push, the gymnastics movements are really no problem for her, and her fitness is really good. So the box jump overs, and then we've seen what she can do with the sandbag. So that 60 pounds would be really light for her, but be interested to see how she does in this. Test 2. It's called Facilito.
It basically means that it's like it couldn't get any easier.
4-time, and you're right. 4-time, 40, 30, 18 rep scheme, chest to bars pull-ups, and then 21, 15, 9 for the snatch. Men's weight it looks like it goes up each round on the weight.
Yeah, so this will be in the build up to this competition, I've been working very closely with Hannu, and he's my friend from Finland that has a ton of competition experience there, and the directors and the programmers. And not only are the workouts very intentional and I think for the most part extremely well designed, the floor layouts will be very nice. And if from a viewer's perspective on site or at home, these events should be, the running event we'll get to is the running event, but outside of that one, and even within that one, they should be very digestible. And that's something that we're trying to make a high priority on with the coverage of Madrid this year, is that you can tell what's going on very quickly upon turning it on, coming to the bathroom, or if you're following along extremely closely. With the increasing weight snatch, there should be 3 barbells on the floor. Obviously, you got to do the chest bar pull-ups there, but the progression will be very nice and easy to follow. Facilito, as they say.
Facilito. Easy to follow. The lifting test, we already talked about the 3 rounds, clean and jerk, the jump bar double unders. So, that should be fun for, especially like you said, if someone like Christoph is competing, but even like Adrian Moonweiler, I would love to see him, in this test. And on the women's side,
Lazar Jukic has posted multiple lifts of 157, 160 kilo clean and jerks. One of them from the hang, I think, recently. So, the athletes are getting ready for this for sure. And the way that we've designed this one, I believe the last time I looked at it, is also going to make it fairly digestible for the audience at home. Even though there should be multiple athletes lifting at a time, you should, as we have laid it out, you should be able to see all the lifts that you want to see.
Yeah, 90-second window, so 90-second rest. So, yeah, that's cool. I like that. It'll be cool to watch this and just see, how fast they're pushing it on the jump bar double unders, or if they trip up, how that affects their mentality going to the actual lift.
And I kind of like that. Look at that sneaky tie break down there.
I saw that second heaviest lift. That's interesting. So instead of, I like that.
So if you hit a big lift in lift 2 and you think, that'd probably be good enough to get it done, you still gotta you still might want to even, I wonder if there'll be any athletes that do the same lift twice, just to see, just in case, just to break the tie or whatever. If it comes to the last round and I've already done 160 kilos and you've done 155 and you do the 160, I'm like, oh well, I can just hit 160 again, and even if he hits it, I break the tie, and I don't have to go heavier. So, be interesting to see how that one plays out in terms of strategy.
Yeah, that strategy would be really big in that. But I also like to see, because of that second tiebreaker, hopefully their coaches are telling them that, hey, that second lift has to be a really good, near your 1 rep max. But maybe those guys going for some 1 rep max as well. Some of them going for, you only get 3 lifts, so it'll be interesting to see. Test 4. Plain and simple, 5K run. Run with the plate carrier. So 35, 45 for the men. El Parque.
Yep, right in the middle of the competition. So similar to what we saw at the games, and this has been on the books for a long time. Cool course that they're going to be running, I believe. I haven't obviously seen it, but from what the guys have told me. So a little bit of a lifting test, a little bit of running test.
Nice. Test 5, the burpee maker. I love the name, the burpee maker. 4 times, 75 burpees over the bar in a 2-minute window. 16-12 calorie row, 12 thrusters at 40-30 kilograms, max bar facing burpees, 5 sets, rest 1 minute, time cap 14 minutes.
Yeah, I've
Ooh,
seen you, if you've been paying attention to a few of the athletes' posts on Instagram with regards to
yeah,
this one, the writing is on the wall. Like you have to go to that dark place. You have to
yeah,
go there 5 times.
mhm,
You have to be aggressive on the row. You have to do the thrusters unbroken, and you can't stop on the burpees. It's only 2 minutes, but you
yeah,
will see, athletes hit a wall on this one. You'll see the nervous system like deplete,
the
and people
shutdown.
will be going for it. And you'll see other athletes that somehow or another are getting better by a burpee or two every round. And it'll there's a little bit of an opportunity for strategy here, but you have to be willing to hurt if you want to win this event.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one to watch, especially that. Yeah, I like this. I always like these interval tests where you have a rest. Every time I just these type of tests because we do a lot of that, a lot of these interval type workouts at our gym. So it's always cool because you think that rest is helpful, but it's sometimes it isn't. It's that 1 minute isn't enough to get that heart rate back down. And if it does, you have to jack it back right up with burpees. So um, test 6, the wrap our up, I guess.
Yeah, and so we have seen some other gymnastics, obviously, but here is a mostly gymnastic specific test that balances out the running, that balances out the lifting that we've already seen. So you have a little buy-in and buy-out, stair, ramp, stair, and in the middle, you have the ski calories and the total volume of ring muscle ups, 36 for the men, 27 for the women, will end up being sneaky in that last round, especially towards the end
Mhm.
of the competition. They've already done those snatches. They've already done those chest to bar pull-ups. Um, they've, you know, the, they'll be feeling at this point, and I think with a kind of gymnastics specific test and that volume of ring muscle ups there at the handstand obstacle, you'll need to have not just good gymnastics, but also kind of good competition experience to make sure that the body's ready to hit one aggressively. It is only 3 rounds, so execution will be at a premium if you want to win this one towards the end of the competition.
And the last announced one is coming soon. So test 7 is gonna be a surprise. So I imagine it's going to be something that's going to be pretty fun and ridiculous at the same time. Um,
I might know what it is, and I think it'll be a nice way to round out the competition. Pretty fun and challenging one for the athletes, and seven tests, 4 days. So none of the days are super crazy. I think it's 2-1, 2-2 or something like that for the elites. So they can also enjoy their time there in Madrid. They can watch some other divisions if they want to. They can, hang out and meet some fans if they want to go into town, if they want to go back and relax. So I think that what you're also setting up for is that the athletes will be able to bring a high level of intensity every time they take the competition floor, while the recovery and what you eat and do in between workouts and day-to-day matters. It's not with the same level of stress and like the demand of time turnaround between tests that you would get at the CrossFit Games. So I think you'll really see the athletes performing at a high level every time that they take the floor.
yeah. And as you mentioned, you're going there because you're going to be part of the broadcast team. You and our good friend Greg from up north from Canada, but guy is very is I don't know how many languages that guy knows, but it'll be you two on the broadcast team, and it will be available in English through YouTube. Check back on Be Friendly. We'll have the links there. Brian will have it on his own personal page, and it looks like Dazen, is that the company that Oscar De La Hoya founded?
I don't know about that, but there will be a Spanish broadcast also
Yeah,
on DAZN. So
yeah,
Spanish speakers, English speakers both have an opportunity to tune in and watch this one. We'll have some like I think the pre and post game will be in English. I think we're going to have interviews on the floor that will be primarily in English. If the athletes need a translator, we're going to try to make that happen as well. We have a few different people that will be doing some interviews down there. I think Alex, maybe Bella, Joe, possibly each taking some turns with that. So just should be a pretty good broadcast overall. They've invested quite a bit into making this happen this year, and I know that their expectations are high and that they want to deliver a quality product for anyone who is interested in seeing what's going on in Madrid.
Yeah, I just looked up the Dazn. It is I think it's co-owned by Oscar de la Hoya, and they're known more for their pay-per-views for boxing, and it's a big deal. I mean, for them to have that broadcasted on that network is a big deal because, again, obviously boxing is really big in Spanish-speaking countries. So this would be it'd probably be almost like the equivalent of the U.S. us having something on, not ESPN, but something similar. But that's a big deal. So that's kind of cool. So multilingual broadcast, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I actually spoke with Greg today. Greg Langto has been around the CrossFit scene forever, but in the last couple of years hasn't done as much. He also has some coffee company he owns in Montreal, and he does some radio stuff there in French. A good friend of mine. We've worked together going back many years, and it'll be exciting to see him and be able to call the action with him.
Yeah. Well, so you're packing for Madrid. You're leaving tonight for Madrid. Spend a couple of days there. You're going to go off to Europe for leg 5, I guess. 5, technically 6, because I think you're going to multiple Scandinavian countries. Is that right? Sweden and Norway.
Yep, we'll go to Madrid. We'll go to Stockholm, Halmstad. I'm going to I'm actually going to participate in the competition down there for a day in the intermediate men's team of 2, and then we'll go over to Norway, visit the CrossFit Oslo crew, and integrate with the community a bit there.
That's going to be so awesome. I'm jealous, obviously. But before I let you go, there's some things I wanted to get your thoughts on. We didn't get to talk about it much last week, but the Rogue Invitational, obviously, that happened. Qualifier happened last weekend. It's far from being finalized, but just your thoughts looking at the initial leaderboard. Again, we know how strict Rogue is when it comes to their standards. But as far as we know, a minimum of 5 athletes will be pulled from the qualifier to compete at the Rogue Invitational. And if you look at this list, it's a who's who of CrossFit athletes. That shows how important how important people think, or how highly these athletes think of Rogue, that they want to compete in this. And starting on the women's side, Danny Spiegel, Sydney, Taylor Howe, Man Agoniz, and then Elena from Spain are the top 5. So, I mean, as of today, they would be the ones that would be getting the invite. And further down the list, Christine Kohlenbrand, Kyra Milligan, Lena Rector, Sarah Sig. I mean, again, like a who's who, Lauren Fisher. And then Jordan Swick, who we know, Brittany Weiss. I mean, you just go all the way down. It's ridiculous. Initial thoughts on. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll start with the women's side. The men's side, I think, even has more depth and impressive roster in terms of athletes that have participated in this. But yeah, there's, I've kind of withheld talking too much about it because I don't really know the rule. I don't know how many athletes will be invited from the games. I don't know if they'll do any backfills if at games athletes decline. I don't know if they'll invite only 5 here, or if they'll backfill down this list. And this list is not finalized. We know that they will undergo a review process. Last year, some very well-known athletes who are Rogue sponsored, athletes who are using Rogue equipment, were not following the rules that were laid out. They didn't weigh their plates, or they didn't move well enough, or whatever. And so we'll see scoring adjustments. We'll see scores zeroed out. And in terms of that side of things, I kind of want to refrain from saying too much, other than a very impressive leaderboard, until we kind of figure out what the real or the final decisions are. As far as the workouts themselves, they were very challenging. I think that if you want to, I'm not sure if JR and Taylor have done anything on Shut Up and Scroll yet in terms of evaluating those, but it seemed like there was a lot of hinging, maybe a little bit of redundancy of that movement pattern over the course of the tests. But outside of that, they were basically just very difficult. And if you want to compete at Rogue, the path there is not easy. There's you can do well enough at the CrossFit Games, or you can sign up for the probably most difficult field of athletes and combination of tests that you'll do in a weekend to try to earn your right to be there in October.
Yeah. And you look at the qualifiers. The qualifiers are made specifically for the type of test that they're going to be testing at Rogue. So it's going to be strength and power output. I mean, that's typically what Rogue, that's what they're known for. So, so when people say that, oh, these aren't going to be the fittest people or whatnot, I mean, yes, you are going to get the fittest people because they're pulling them from the games, whether it be the top 14, top 10, however they decide to do it. But the athletes they want there, I mean, they're not looking for the fittest athletes. They're just looking to put on an exhibition essentially that has a huge payday at the end of it. So I think that people need to get that mentality out of their brain where like, oh, these aren't the fittest people. Rogue isn't made for they're not looking for the fittest people. They're looking to showcase the sport and their equipment and what these people can do.
Yeah, and they want athletes there that will be able to handle what's thrown at them. And so if it is the qualifier, that's your path to get there, you can expect it to be difficult in the way that's unique to Rogue.
Yes, this is the gateway to get to Rogue. Because it doesn't matter if you finish 20th, I believe, you still get $6,000, if not more. So, that's why you have all these names on this list. I mean, when you get down to 20th, I mean,
And
Ashley
by the
Watt.
way, there should be, a qualifier for a competition should be vetting the field for the types of things that they need to do in the competition. We've had this conversation, and I've written about this year with regards to this various stages of the CrossFit game season. Is the Open a good test for the quarterfinals that's actually getting athletes to quarterfinals with the skills and strength that they'll need to have fun and and attempting those workouts? The same question from quarterfinals to semis and semis to the games. And to the CrossFit Games, that's a 4-step process, or at least it was this past season. And for anyone who's writing a qualifier, choosing to incorporate a qualifier into a qualifying, as a qualifying stage for a live competition, I feel that should be something that's taken very seriously. Like, okay, if what do they have here? Strict handstand push-ups and handstand walking. We should expect a more difficult version of the inverted test at the Invitational. Otherwise, why were you testing for those things? We had to do some heavy lifting here. We should expect some similarly heavy lifting, maybe a different variety, but there should be a heavy test at Rogue, if not two. And you can extrapolate out from there.
On the men's side, you mentioned the men's side. I'm always impressed by Victor Hoffa every time I see him. But to see him right now, again, like I said, it's way too early. We don't know what's going to happen. But even now, just seeing his name on top of the list on these type of workouts, I talked to some people over in Europe, actually some people that trained with him, and they said that he has gotten dramatically stronger since the finals.
Yeah, I mean, look, 14 points over second place, and then the next 7 guys are within 6 points or something like that.
Yes,
So
really.
he's separated himself from the field there before any of the reviews happen. But it's not just that he's done that. Look at the names there. I mean, Ricky Garrard, Travis Mayer, Georgos Karavis, Tudor Magda, games. Guillaume Briand, games. Jason Hopper, games. Like, there's a ton of games athletes in the top 10. And if you think about Victor Hoffer's season this year, he went to Dubai last year in the off season. He did okay. He showed up he showed up in the quarterfinals and had a world record performance on one of the tests. Everyone got to see it. He goes to semifinals. He did not have the greatest start to semifinals. For a young athlete, that can be extremely defeating. He didn't let it get down on him. He had an incredible bounce back. Test, I think 5, 6, 7. The last 3 were best ones, if I'm remembering correctly. And he just looked the part. Like, he looked like he belonged at that stage. So if these results hold and he's able to compete in Rogue, I think he got invited to Dubai. If he goes back there again, I'll be excited to see him in 1 or 2 major off-season competitions this year. It's not just that he's gotten stronger, but just kind of see the maturity of a young athlete in terms of how he carries himself, how he competes, how he handles the setbacks, because clearly his ceiling is super high. And if he gets a couple opportunities to go out there against the best in the world this offseason, then that's, I think, only going to help.
Yeah. and kind of what I was implying, it was the strength. Him to finish, in the top 10 for that overhead squat workout, right there at Colton Mertens. That's impressive. And again, you mentioned Christoph. That's just mind blowing.
Yeah, 331. Not as impressive as 335. Sorry, Christoph, I overshot you there.
Yeah, but he probably did do it. Maybe his math's wrong. But I mean, to see Victor's name, I mean, a comparable athlete would be someone like Tudor. Tudor is a very strong athlete, very good on his hands, but he's right. But we won't think of Victor as that way. But here he is. He's like basically a half a pound away from what Tudor lifted, and
Yep.
that's just impressive. you know, um, going further down the list, I think Colton Mertens was 24th. I mean, it's stacked. To see someone like Jason Hopper in 10th currently.
I mean, Colton Mertens has made the Rogue qualifier more than one occasion in the past, and he's not even in the top 20. So the depth of field that has signed up this year to participate and compete is extreme.
Yeah, I think we've had these discussions before when it comes to like backfilling. Sometimes maybe it's better to backfill through the games further down than the qualifier based on the level of athlete or type of athlete. But looking at this year, I would be more inclined to backfill if I'm had to backfill from the qualifier. I'm a big believer that personally, I think you should always backfill from the qualifier, regardless of who the individuals are, just because one, they're paying to do this. And I think that it's just a nice reward as opposed to just giving a straight up invite. But Rogue gets an invite, they can do whatever they want. But when you look down the list and you see someone like Jason Hopper and some of these, I would be more inclined to backfill from the qualifier just based on the level of talent that took qualifier this year.
Well, we will wait and see what the decision is this time around for Rogue. I think either way, as always, it's going to be a super deep and stacked and impressive field there. And I'm sure they'll have a variety of different challenges for the athletes to show their stuff.
Yeah. Couple more things. This was announced today that a former teen athlete, Kelsey Keel, is going individual. She announced this morning that she was going to go individual for the upcoming season. So, she had an opportunity to compete in 2020. She got, I believe, was in line to get a backfill spot. I believe, was it through strength or depth or 5150, I believe.
Yeah, I'd have to check the notes to be sure, but maybe strength and depth.
Strength and depth. Like she was in line to get a backfill spot because everyone that beat her had already did well in the open. But that year for the games, they didn't take backfills to the games. Like they just took the winners of those those semifinals before everything shut down. But your thoughts on Kelsey Keel as an individual athlete?
Well, I'm sorting through all the athletes in the world that I'm aware of at this time, and putting in my power rankings for next season. Kelsey will certainly be on the list.
Yep.
Haven't seen her do an individual competition against a game style field or even really a semifinals field in a while. So she's got tremendous upside on certain things for sure. She has a lot of experience competing at the highest level, and it's not unprecedented for athletes to qualify for the cross as part of a team, have some success there, and transition over to the individual side and find similar success. I know that even as far back as Zalos games last year, which she was unable to compete at, but she was there with us, that she'd been putting in the miles on the running and trying to improve in that regard. So very tough competitor, super strong, great attitude, a lot of experience. I think that definitely expect to see her at a semifinal next year, and I would not be surprised if she was, flirting with taking one of the last couple of game spots at one of those.
Starting my first of many stints in Baton Rouge, starting in 6 days. Is that Brandon Luckett? Are they in Baton Rouge or New Orleans?
I think he's in Louisiana somewhere, so Baton Rouge would be a good bet.
Oh no, okay, Coach L, gotcha.
Well, Coach L he's overseas. So, he might be doing the programming, but I don't think L is going to be in Louisiana.
Yeah. So, it'd be interesting because I know in the past she was a brute strength athlete. So, or at least programming. It might have been for open box, but
he coaches for brute. Coach L does.
that makes sense then. Well, that transitions kind of to my other question, and about brute strength. You know, Matt Torres was on Sevon early this week, and or last week, and he mentioned that brute strength is making the move from Naples to Jacksonville, um, and there is going to be a split between him and uh, one of the coaches with brute, um, and so with Coach Dom. That Dom, I believe Dom is staying in Florida, but I believe he's staying in that Naples area. So it hasn't been made official. He didn't say that Dom has left Brew, but basically what he's saying is Dom isn't going to Jacksonville with. So, yeah.
Did he mention if any of
So,
the athletes were or were not?
well, he did mention that Danielle and Dallin will be going to Jacksonville, and he did mention something about James going to Jacksonville as well. So James is currently in Washington because I think his lease ran out in Naples, and so he thought it was just easier to go back home before they figure out what the next moves are. But they found a facility, or Matt did find a facility in Jacksonville that's bigger than what they had in Naples, and yeah, so that's going to be the new home for brute strength. So
I know he did that just for me, so it's like, can I cut the drive in half if I want to come down from Charlotte?
yeah, he did just for you, Brian.
Nobody wants to drive the other 6 hours through Florida to get down to the south.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of possibilities out of that. I mean, obviously people don't know Coach Dom as well, but he is a very good coach. I believe he was actually, in terms of some of the younger athletes, he was kind of mentoring them. And he was, I think, at one point considered the weightlifting coach for Brute, the Olympic lifting coach. But yeah, I mean, thoughts
look,
on
in
that?
situations like this, Ben Bergeron used to talk about this because obviously he fostered a great community there at CompTrain in New England over the years and started very early on. And he would develop coaches over time. And then, some of them have stayed and been there with him for years and years and years. Others would move on and open their own gym or go and coach their own athletes or move somewhere else and do their own thing. And it's kind of, I think as a coach of coaches, the same way as a coach of athletes, like, my hope would be that it was an amicable departure, and you never like to
Mhm.
see things come to an end in a negative way, and that it could just say, yeah, like, our time together has been great, we've both been able to grow and learn from each other, and we're going to go in our own way, and I wish you the best. And that's reciprocated. I think that for a lot of people it's a natural evolution. You spend time around a great coach, you learn from him, he learns from you, and then at some point you see an opportunity and you're like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to go do this thing. It's in some ways that's what we've done. We came up in this space and have had opportunities because of a variety of different people, and some of them are people we still work with, some are people that we've taken a chance and moved on from over a period of time. And I think that in any of those capacities, whether it's as an athlete, as a coach, or whatever, that it's okay for that to happen. And my hope would just be that it happened in a natural and positive way.
Yeah, I think Matt did say to Sevon that Mayhem has reached out to Dom or vice versa. So if you know anything about Dom, he's very big about faith and service. So, that could be a smart move. So who knows? It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what athletes, if any, or how that affects Brute. But we know that Matt Torres is a very talented and a great coach. He has the athletes there. I mean, it's but it'll be interesting to see. It's part of the changes we see in camps. I think happens every year where there's something like this, but you don't see it affect the athletes as much. It's more of us kind of maybe overblowing it, but it's just something that I wasn't sure if you're aware of it, but just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Cool.
And then the last bit of news I wanted to kind of just get your opinion on uh, was regarding Jamie Simmons. Um, it looked like that she opted to get surgery on her elbow, but she did say that she's still hopeful for the 2024 season. Oh, let me pull that up. I'm not sure if you're aware of this.
Yeah,
But,
I saw this the other day. Was it yesterday or the day before that she posted this? And I think she was, fairly responsible. She saw a few different people, ended up, talking to her friends and family, making this decision. Um, and as she said there, hopeful to be able to gain trust in this again, and look forward to what next year has the chance to offer. And keep in mind that that can mean many different things, right? So if we can expect that the path to qualifying will look different this year than it did last year, and even if it's identical to it was last year in terms of the Oceanic region, we're expecting Tia to be back in the field of play, and if she competes there, that's a challenge. If she doesn't compete there, then maybe there's some more opportunity. Um, we'll see how the distribution or the change of worldwide ranking and strength of field spots happen. So there's a lot of unknowns as far as CrossFit Games season path could be for her. But what we're about to see at Madrid is a variety of athletes who we've seen at the games many years and didn't make it this year. The Travis Mayers, Yogos Karavis, Jacqueline Dahlstrom, Turi Helga daughters. And there will be opportunity next year in the off season, regardless of how the game season goes for her, if she wants there to be. So obviously hopeful that the surgery went well, that she, I'm sure that she'll be diligent in the rehab process. That's usually not an issue for these athletes. They're so disciplined and dedicated anyway that they're the best. Like the only problem that you ever have as a doctor or as a rehab therapist or with them is that they want to go too fast. They want to do too much. But I'm sure she'll put in the work and the discipline. She's had some injuries in the past that she's been able to bounce back from. So wish her the best. I think I may possibly see her soon. I don't know where they're at. I think they might be in London right now, but yeah, great people, her and Elliot. So always pleasurable to see them anywhere that they are competing or otherwise. And I expect that it won't be the last we see of her.
Oh, definitely not. And she's such one of the nicest people in CrossFit. It's always cool seeing her. She's developed a really good friendship with Laura and Gabby. So it's always cool to see those three together because I don't know, just whenever you see those three ladies together, they just look like they're smiling and having fun and really truly enjoying the moment. I think a lot of that might be because of who Jamie is. If you've ever met Jamie, that's just who she is. I think that's just the Kiwi in her, just enjoying everything. But yeah, Brian, that's about it. That's all I got. Is there anything you wanted to, any news for you or from you or anything? I don't know.
No, just gonna continue packing things up here and get ready to head to the airport. I got the overnight trip to Madrid. Be touching down there tomorrow. Have about 48 hours in the city to get acclimated. Might try to drop into one or two boxes and see some stuff before competition starts on Thursday.
Yeah. And as always, we do get a lot of people that ask us about our Patreon or how they can support us. Our Patreon, it's up. You just look up B.Friendly on patreon.com or through the app. Currently, we have 116 patrons. We have created tiers, and one of the tiers were I think it's friend of the friend, that would be you, is we are coming up with an exclusive T-shirt. And if you can see right here, we have one in cement. Is that what it's called? Cement? Yeah, cement. And then we have black. And these will be exclusive to the friend of the friend Patreon members. These are the designs we're currently polling our current Patreons to see which one they prefer. And yeah, that'll be exclusive to them. But we have three different levels of giving and support if that's what you want to do. So please, if you want to support, well, you can support us by just saying hi and following us. But also, if you want to support us in other ways, the Patreon's a really good way of doing that. Brian's going to be going off to Madrid. I got to play Army this weekend. We will have someone on the ground to provide daily recaps from Madrid. Our buddy of Truth Films, he's going to be there, and he's going to be helping out Brian while he's there and catching some stuff for us, featuring it. So if you're not following him now, please follow Truth. As we always say with all our creatives, please follow them. Yeah, that's about all I got. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We covered this. Yeah, I mean, football starts this week.
I think the schedule in terms of time commitments and stress for me will be less over the next couple of weeks in Europe. Yeah. So we'll do a couple of shows on the road. Try to do one in Madrid and Sweden and Norway if we can.
Yeah, definitely. Because today we will put up your second diary from, I guess, journal entry from Iron Games. Utah. That'll be up today. That will be up today. So make sure you go and read that. Those provides a lot of insight that we normally don't talk about here, like what Brian does on a day-to-day basis, a little bit more behind the scenes for these competitions. So we look forward to seeing one for Madrid. I think that one's going to be crazy. And
First things first, I'll write about the Pit Teen Throwdown, and then we'll get to Madrid.
that's right. Yeah, I'm behind. We'll catch up. But yeah, we got future episodes. Obviously, Dubai invites went out. We talked about that, but I think the second round of invites are going out. That's going to be exciting. That's something that we're both looking forward to being going to Dubai.
I can tell you this: the men's field is full. All 30 athletes have accepted. There was a second round of invites, but they've filled up the men's side, and I believe they're down to 5 open spots on the women's side. So a few more invites will be going out shortly.
That's awesome. I mean, just what we've seen so far, it's been pretty impressive on both the men and women's side. Yeah, there's LFIT competition that's coming up. We're not going to be covering that, but we'll still show some love. I mean, just a bunch of competitions coming up. Obviously, we have Rogue. We're in the planning stages of being there. I know a lot of our followers and viewers will be there as well. So please, we'll try to have some type of activation or some type of meet and greet there. Not for me, for Brian. Yeah, that's got a lot of stuff going on. I feel more busy now than I did during the season. I know you do.
That's all right. We'll get it done.
Yeah.
We'll take it day by day, competition by competition, try to keep you guys abreast of what we're doing, and also keep a pulse on all the stuff that we can't be intimately or immediately involved with.
Yeah, because believe it or not, soon Brian will be We'll be talking about a little bit more disc golf here soon. Brian's got a couple trips, not just these trips, but he's has a couple opportunities to go actually watch some of these tour events live. So definitely, just being his channel, we definitely want to get his opinions and thoughts on those as well. Yeah, so a lot of cool stuff going on. We're at the greatest part of the year, I think. Because you have baseball season that's coming to the end, you have football season starting, you have the UFC going on. I mean, there's so much going on. If you're a sports fan, just in general, not just in CrossFit, this is one of my favorite times. It's so fun. I mean, I had the opportunity this weekend to shoot a collegiate soccer game in an MLS stadium. It was so awesome. It was such a great environment, And then yeah. As always, thanks for the support, everyone. Thanks for supporting Brian, I, and Chad's journey in this. Just a lot of great things on the horizon. We keep on saying that, but every time we I don't know, it just seems like there always is. So hopefully sooner than later. And thanks for your support. And as always, be friendly, our friends.